Autism is defined as a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. Autism is now referred to as Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, because 5 different disorders with different symptoms and severities but are related enough are categorized together. Autism is a brain disorder that begins early in a baby's life, and major symptoms show around the age of 2 or 3. New screenings can detect autism as early as 1 year old, and that is important. The earlier an autistic child gets treatment, the better the life of the autistic person can be. There is no cure for autism. There are cases of individuals who have improved their symptoms enough to test off the spectrum, however. Autism, as a term, was coined in the early 1900s by Swiss psychiatrist Eugene Bleuler, who used it to describe schizophrenia, which is no longer linked to autism. Autismus, the original Latin, and the word Bleuler, originally used, comes from the Greek autos, meaning self. It describes the isolated self Bleuler saw in patients diagnosed as schizophrenic. The earliest documented case of autism was in 1747, when Hugh Blair's brother petitioned the courts to annul Hugh's marriage over fear of Hugh's wife only marrying him for their fortune, the Blair family fortune. Court documents describe Hugh Blair as having autistic symptoms. The next case is from the 1790s, the wild boy of Aveyron, a feral child living in the wild for 7 years, then introduced back to society in 1798. Modern-day researchers believed, based on notes from the time regarding attempts to teach him language and social skills, that he had autism based on his ability to learn to communicate and some of his behaviors. For over 100 years, cases of autism lay dormant. In 1938, Hans Asperger's research led to a separation between autism and schizophrenia. Leo Kanner published his findings in research that he did with children, some of whom exhibited autistic aloneness and insistence on sameness. For the next few decades, there was a lot of confusion around autism, many people confusing it with schizophrenia. One example of inaccurate research by Bruno Bettelheim claimed autism was caused by unloving cold mothers or refrigerator mothers. Treatment used during this time included LSD, electric shock therapy, and behavior change focusing on pain and punishment. Not until the 1980s and 90s did behavioral therapy focus on positive rewards and controlled learning environments for children with autism. In 1987, autism disorder was finally given diagnostic criteria. Ivar Lovaas's study showed intense behavior therapy improved autistic symptoms. In 1991, the United States government made autism a special education category, which has had both positive and negative results depending on where in the spectrum the autistic child is and how far along in the behavioral development they are. Another negative study in 1998 stated that the measles, mumps, rubella, MMR vaccine causes autism. That is not true, but is still believed to be true due to the publicity surrounding it. Autism is the fastest growing developmental disorder in the United States. 1 out of 68 children born now are diagnosed with autism. Much of that is due to better diagnosis. However, we still do not know what causes autism. There are about 100 genes that increase the risk factor for autism, some causing autism on their own. Environmental factors are still believed to be a contributor to autism. Autism is almost 5 times more likely in boys than in girls. As it still stands, there is no simple answer to the question, what causes autism? Is it genetics, environment, brain biology, advanced parent age, preterm birth? All of those are potential factors. Early detection is key, but just as importantly, so is the treatment. Once diagnosed, work with your child in the realms of behavioral and social interactions. Just as you would show any child you have love, show your autistic child even more so. Lastly, I asked my brother questions in respects to autism, which he was diagnosed with at the age of 3 in the mid-1980s.
So, Paul, how do you defy myths and stereotypes about the traditional definition of autism?
Well, the thing is, it's said that many people have repetitive thoughts and actions, etc. But sometimes I don't become repetitive. There are times when and also one of the things that is mentioned is people with autism are sensitive to touch and sound. And I overcame some of those things.
Tell us a little bit about how you've overcome it. What do you do now? What are things you've done in your life that prove that this isn't entirely true?
Well, first thing, it's like how they say sensitive to touch. I've had people pat me on the back. I've had people shake my hand, and I am open towards that.
That's one good example. How about some of the bigger things you've done in your life?
Well, like how some things have to be routine. Like if there was a table and lamp when I was a child, it had to be in this special corner. But now I find a way to put it at the other side without.
These are nice examples, but what about a couple of those really big things that you did in your life? You know, like the fact that you wrote a play.
Yes, I have. That is one of the few things I've done. I went to college. And
tell us about you being able to go to college, get along with people, go to classes, the fact that you joined a club there.
Yes.
And tell us all about the play that you wrote.
Okay, well, first thing is, the play I wrote is called The Russian Comedy. It was published, shown at Tri-C. I also am going to write another screenplay sometime soon this year. The other thing was the Access Club, which helped me see other people with different disabilities. And another thing, I was actually the first person with autism to go to St. Mark Lutheran, which was in 1992. And it was a big leap for others who probably have disabilities like ADHD or deaf, blind, or can't even speak.
Well, and I'm sure that helps a lot of kids out there who, along with their parents as well, that might see that their children are autistic, and they wonder what will happen to them as they get older. And they can see that people with autism, regardless of whatever level of the spectrum that they may be on, you're higher functioning, but you are at a level in your life where you're able to live on your own, you cook your own meals, you take care of yourself, the bus to get here today. Yep. I mean, all of these things, those kinds of things that you should have said and not me right now, that shows that just because you have autism doesn't mean you can't accomplish a lot of things in your life. Tell me about the things that you personally have accomplished. Let's see. Talk a little more about how you wrote that play.
Well, there was a playwriting class at Tri-C 12 years ago. I decided to join that. And with the troublesome moments I've had in my life, like being left out, time after time, kind of made the hero be the guy who wanted to be different,
Right.
and yet he never seemed to fit in.
Okay. And so you sat at a computer and you typed out a play.
Yes.
How many pages long was the play?
I think it was around 20,
And it's called a one-act play,
the Russian comedy.
which is a one-act play.
Yes.
Yes. Let's see, what else have we got that I can use? So you defy some of the autistic myths, although you do perpetuate some of those stereotypes and myths. You show that just because a person has autism doesn't mean that they can't be somewhat successful and have what most people would consider a normal life.
Yes.
Good. All right. Now let's see. The thing that sucks is that this didn't pick up any of my audio, probably. Well, maybe enough of it so I'll know what I asked you and fill in stuff. Hopefully, I only use about a minute of this or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the plan.
Mhm.
How many minutes are we at now? I didn't put that timer on. All right. Anything that you want to say in closing? Important things. Just anything that's on your mind. What was that one thing that you were talking about with the podcast earlier when you first showed up? That you had an idea for? Oh, I forgot to mention what sensitivity to light.
Oh, yes, there's,
That's more general. I need. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. No, that works actually. All right. Go ahead.
well, one of the things I enjoy is the 4th of July. And many children with autism really don't enjoy because there's probably loud marching bands, fire trucks blaring, even fireworks. And many of them would do this. Those, there's headphones or the sound guards that construction workers use.
Yeah, they're a lot
Man.
like those.
Yes,
And when you see those on young children,
they probably have autism.
all right, that was constructed well enough, I think. All right. I don't know. Anything else you got for me?
Well, one of the things, like I said, I've done a lot of accomplishments.
Yeah.
Here's another one that in life for people with autism that grow up, it's going to take them a little bit longer to get used to something or do something like trying to drive a car. I tried to get my license many times, but
You have your license.
well, I have it now, but
Yeah.
it took me a while. Sometimes it always occurs but then once I got into it, I got used to, I knew what I did. Sometimes change is difficult, and life is hard. But people with autism, it takes them a little more challenging because many of them have to overcome the obstacles.
That's very well said. Do you want to end it with that?
Yes, we can end with that.